Welcome to the LSE Methodology Institute STATA tutorial series sponsored by the LSE Annual Fund. In this video, we'll look at 2- and 3-way contingency tables. So in this video, we're interested in seeing whether or not there's a relationship between how interested a respondent is in politics and whether or not they're likely to attend a peaceful demonstration. So for this analysis, we're using this variable here, which is a measure of self-defined political interest, as our explanatory variable, and this variable here, demo, which is another categorical variable, as our response variable. So to run a two-way contingency table is quite easy in STATA. What we do is we first type the command tabulate, and then we choose our response variable, which in this case is demo, and then our explanatory variable, which in this case is this variable here, and then we type a comma, and then our two options. First, we type in chi, which is the test statistic to see whether or not there's evidence of a relationship in the population, and then finally we type in column, which includes the column percentages, so this helps us with the interpretation of our results. So we see that we have this frequency table with some column percentages added in. So the first thing we want to do is we want to focus down here, which gives us our test statistic. So our test statistic here is called chi-square, which is displayed as chi2 in the STATA output, and we see that that value is 15.4706. And the p-value associated with that chi-square value is something very, very small. So this means that we can reject our null hypothesis. Our null hypothesis for these types of chi-square tests is that there is no relationship in the population. So if we rejected that null hypothesis, what we're saying is that there is some evidence that there's a relationship in the population between our two variables. So let's go back up to the table and see what that means. So what we can see is that in the column of one being not very interested, that most people who aren't very interested would never do or might do in terms of attending a demonstration, and only 8% have. So in other words, if you're not that engaged with politics, you're less likely to be involved in a demonstration or have been involved in a demonstration in the past. And if you are interested, it seems to be quite evenly distributed between the three categories. So now we might want to ask, well, we see that there is a relationship in the population, but maybe there's a difference in relationship between men and women. This is a little bit tricky to do in STATA. So first what we want to do is we want to look at the values for the variable gender. And what we can see is that gender is coded as 0 for female and 1 for male. So what we have to do is we actually have to run the same analysis, but we have to do it once for females and once for males. And to do that, let's just click over here, and we see that we have the same command as before. But instead of running it on the whole of the data set, we put in an if statement. We just put if gender is equal to 0. So in other words, we're going to run the same cross tabulation, but only for females. And what we see is something quite similar to the results we had for the whole of the population. The chi-square test statistic is a little bit different. It's 16.8205. The p-value is quite small. So again, we reject the null hypothesis of no relationship in the population. And again, we see that if one is not engaged very much in politics, then it's quite unlikely that they have been in a demonstration before, and it's still pretty evenly distributed if you are very or quite involved in politics. So that's for females. If we click on the command as we have before, and instead of having gender equals 0, we put gender equals 1. So what we're doing is we're running the same cross tabulation, but just on males. What we see is that our chi-square value is quite low now. It's 1.1786. Our p-value is 0.555, which is higher than most standard levels of significance. So in other words, we don't have enough evidence to be able to reject the null hypothesis, and we are unable to find evidence to say that there is a relationship. In other words, when we divided between males and females and looking at the same relationship, we saw something a little bit interesting. The relationship persists amongst females, but there is no relationship amongst males. So there you have it. We've had a look at a two-way contingency table, and then we decided to look at that same relationship by gender, and we saw something quite interesting, that the relationship persists amongst females but not amongst males. So that's all for now. Goodbye.